Hey everyone, how you all doing? Good morning. My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. Thank you guys for waiting. Had a little bit of a slow start this morning, but now we're all ready and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. So, continuing on with the last couple of streams, we are still talking about the Uvalde shooting and mass shootings in general, but I wanted to focus a little bit on some of the reactions we're getting from the right wing here, in particular, a couple of people, Candace Owens included, because there's been a switch and they're trying to basically redirect the anger people are feeling towards this shooting in, is that how you pronounce it? Uvalde? Uvalde, Texas, I think. They're trying to redirect that and continue on with their, phony baloney culture war. So, over the last year or so, I mean, we've all been witness to the right wing in this country basically just going balls to the wall against trans people. Um, LGBTQ rights in general, right? But specifically trans people. They've passed a ridiculous amount of laws. I think since what it is according to the American Civil Liberties Union, since 2018 there have been 670 bills proposed in the country, anti-trans bills. Right now, that doesn't mean all of those became law. Excuse me. The vast majority of them, of course, didn't. Um, but you can plainly see where the right wing in this country is focusing on for their next phase in the culture war, right? And this is kind of like something that happens every time. They seem to strategize like every time they an election is looming, the right wing will choose a an issue in order to get people scared about. Basically because right-wing voters, Republicans in general, but just conservatives of all types, including Democratic conservatives, but you know, um, in general, Republicans and conservatives tend to be motivated more by fear than they are by a desire to do the right thing or to help people. That's how they get people. Like it seems like progressive voters are motivated more by trying to do the right thing. Maybe not so much liberal voters, but progressive voters in general tend to vote for the person they think is going to help people the most, right? Conservative voters are more motivated by fear and hate. And that's the pattern that happens every time there's a midterm. That's the pattern that they go with. A few years back, it was Islamic terrorism was the boogeyman that the right wing, went with, right? Especially in the 9/11 era, it was Islamic terrorism, and then after that, it became um, illegal migrants, illegal aliens or undocumented migrants from south of the border, right? And for a good, 6 or 7 years, that's what they've been focusing on. And so you would see stories pop up in the news only around the time of the midterms, things like migrant caravans. Every midterm election, suddenly Fox News is talking about migrant caravans and talking about all the crime that these people come and they bring all their crime and blah blah blah, and it works. That's the problem, is that it works. Donald Trump basically got elected by exploiting this kind of fear. That was his entire shtick: build a wall, right? And so now they've kind of focused that, like the culture war now has shifted. I mean, that's those things are still a problem. Those are still things that the right wing focuses on a lot. I'm not trying to say that they don't care about immigration or Islamic terrorism anymore because they do, but now they seem to be focusing on trans rights, specifically trans rights. I mean, a little bit of anti, homophobia thrown in there, obviously, and some like anti-gay and that kind of thing, like bigotry against gay people, but in particular trans rights, right? I mean, we can see, like I said, 670, anti-LGBTQ laws since 2018. Of those, um, 238 were introduced this year as bills that, to be voted on, right? Just this year, just up until March, 238. I mean, just think about that. They're clearly using this as a wedge issue, that they're going to motivate their base with. And that's why we're seeing all the laws against, like, trans kids going to the bathroom, that of their that they identify with, or trans girls competing in boys sports, stuff like that, like or sorry, trans girls competing in sports with other girls, that kind of thing. Seeing all this stuff, the um, push against CRT is another one. They're banning books now that have any mention of sexuality or that is not like um, basically straight cis sexuality. And all of this stuff, and a little bit of racism thrown in there to boot. You know, that really definitely seems to be what they've been focusing on for the last year. Then, all of a sudden, we get two massively giant mass shootings in a row, and the narrative has been stolen from them. The narrative is no longer trans kids bad. It's now, you know, insane Nazi right wingers are radicalizing our children and turning them into fucking maniacs who are going to schools and murdering people, right? Because that's what fucking happened. That's exactly what happened. Dinah Cat, thanks for joining, man. Cody Course, thank you for joining too. Appreciate it, guys. So, yeah, and it's kind of thrown the right wing into a little bit of a panic because they're not controlling the narrative. And that's one thing that the right wing in this country is really, really good at is controlling the narrative. You ever notice that? You ever notice we only seem to talk about the shit they want to talk about, right? It's because they have that down to a T. They've got that sort of pipeline where somebody out there will, I mean, I don't, and I still don't really understand how it happens. I don't know who comes up with the talking points, right? But you ever notice that the entire right wing media machine will all jump on the same talking point and you'll hear it from, editorials and stuff in places like Fox News and like One American Network and shit like that. You'll hear it from internet trolls, and then you'll start hearing it from like politicians a couple of days later. Like it just seems like somebody out there is like, and I really don't know who it is. I don't know. Is it fucking, the GOP establishment? Is it the Republican Party? Is it like fucking, Roger Ailes or something? Or, whatever. Somebody out there is strategizing and saying, okay, we need to make this our new wedge issue. And then they'll go and you'll see it pop up on a bunch of blogs and you'll see like trolls and shit talking about it on social media. And then like within a day, you'll see it in major right-wing news outlets like Fox and One American Network and Newsmax and that kind of thing. And before you know it, everybody's talking about it. And even, the other news outlets like CNN or whatever will have to talk about it because now that's in the news and that's where the fucking like, you know, that's where the discussion is now. And that's kind of how the Overton window changes. That's how the Overton window moves further to the right because they get to decide what we talk about as like a nation. They're basically setting setting I guess subjects for the debate, you know. And that's why we never talk about things like, say, universal health care or environmental issues or anything like that. We only talk about stuff like, mental health when it comes in relation to gun violence and immigration and like trans. We're only talking about the shit they want to talk about, and that's one way that the right wing is very, very good at directing the national discussion and then thus which policies get enacted, right? Because they're basically controlling the media narrative, for all of the people out there that think that the media is liberal in this country, I not really. It's not when you can, you know when the right wing is basically fucking dictating what we get to talk about. Right. So anyway, that got taken away from them. That got taken away with them from them last week, and so now they're really trying hard to get it back, right? And that's why we're seeing people like Candace Owens, like we're about to talk about, and Jordan Peterson and all these other people try to fucking deflect back to the culture war, right? So before we continue, oh shit, my coffee, I forgot to stir it. Don't you hate that? Like I poured all the sugary crap in, but I forgot to stir it, so now it's like on the bottom. Oh, that's gross. Anyway, give me 1 second here, folks. Just need to stir that up. So before we continue with that, I want to. There is some new info that's come out about the Uvalde shooting last week that we didn't know about, or I didn't know about when I did my stream on it on Saturday or even on Wednesday, right? Which has, yeah, kind of come to light. So it appears that the cops were just basically lying to everybody about this shooting and their response to it. Turns out that the police, there was not a resource officer there, right? So they originally said that when the guy, the fuck was his name? I got his name right here. When Salvador Ramos is his name, right? Where's the hell's my mouse? There it is. Okay. Yeah, when Salvador Ramos showed up at the school, they originally said that there was a police officer there. They call them resource officers, and these are basically school cops, right? So if you've ever heard stories about how kids are like being thrown in jail for like talking during class or like, you know, skipping school or, ditching fourth period or something and going to like smoke a cigarette behind the bleachers, that kind of thing. If you've ever heard like stories about kids being thrown in jail for shit like that, whereas in the past these are things that they would just like, get detention for. Now they're actually getting jail time. They're getting like fines, and having to pay like fines. And then if they can't pay the fine, they have to go to fucking prison. If you ever heard about that, this is one of those people that does that. That's what a resource officer is. Basically, it's a cop with a gun in the school, right? Now, this is nothing new. I mean, there were armed police officers at my school, I mean, 30 years ago. And so it's not like this is something that they've always been doing, but there definitely does exist um, the school to prison pipeline is much more prevalent than it is nowadays. Like there were cops in school when I was in school, but they didn't routinely arrest students for doing things that you would normally just go to detention for. Like even getting in a fight, like if you would like get into a fight with another student, you didn't get arrested for that generally. You'd have to really fuck someone up bad. You'd have to like seriously injure somebody and not just get in a brawl with them, right? Even back then, and nowadays it's like, yeah, any kind of violence whatsoever, if you even just get in like a scuffle with another student or that kind of thing, you get arrested nowadays. You don't just have to like show up on a Saturday and like bang, clean like chalkboard erasers anymore. like like when we were in school. Now you actually like get arrested and all this other shit. You know, and there's even stories, like I said, of kids getting arrested for mundane things like talking during class, chewing bubble gum, showing up late, shit like that. Because anything that gets classified as disturbing the school, like, making a disturbance, that is something that you can get basically arrested for, and not just, pretty much around the country. This is like a thing that's happening around the country, right? So kids are leaving high school with criminal records, and that's like impacting them when they try to get jobs and when they try to go to college and shit like that. And lo and behold, it just so happens that, the more likely, if you're a minority, right, then you're more likely to get arrested in school for mundane things that, you know, 20, 30 years ago, you would just basically fucking have to write standards for, right? Like in The Simpsons, where Bart Simpson is, the opening of The Simpsons, where he's like writing on the wall, I will not pour ink in the fucking, you know, ink in the fountain anymore, or whatever the fuck he writes every, you know what I mean? He always writes something different every Simpsons, right? So that's definitely a thing. So they were saying, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there. They were saying that one of these resource officers was there, right, and exchanged gunfire with this guy, and that turned out to be a lie. And that's the thing, is that, well, that's sort of what the resource officers are supposed to fucking be there for. They're supposed to be there. The whole reason why you have a cop with an armed cop there at the school is in case some maniac shows up with a gun and tries to shoot students, right? And so at first the police there in this town said, okay, well, there was a cop there and there was an exchange of gunfire, and then they admitted there was no exchange of gunfire. And then now they're basically saying that he wasn't even there at all. Because then people were saying, like, well, what, did he fucking let them in? Did he, like, so he didn't try to shoot at him? And they basically, it was a lie, right? Now, I can understand a little bit, like, of the police not having all the information right off the bat. I can understand that, right? Because, these things happen and it's confusing. It's sort of like being in a war zone, and, you don't know, everybody doesn't really have all the information, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of figure out what actually happened. So I can understand there being, if the police spokesman was just incorrect. That's not that big of a deal, but it kind of looks like the police department was lying, like, in a lot of ways, right? Um, Turns out, so that was like a complete fucking lie, right? There was no resource officer, right? The guy fucking Ramos just shows up, walks into a back door of the school, which wasn't locked or whatever. I don't understand that shit, because, one thing about schools is that they're all supposed to be locked from the outside. You're not supposed to be able to walk into a school, right? Like, you're supposed to be able to leave, like in a classroom, it's supposed to be, the doors are supposed to be so that you can't get inside of the classroom, but you can leave the classroom. Like, it doesn't lock the kids in, it just locks people out. That's how it's supposed to be. And at least here in California, that's how it is, right? So I don't know what's going on with that, how he was able to just like walk into a fucking building, right? Like, but anyway, so that happens, right? And then apparently there were two other responding officers that he shot, but they didn't die. But now I'm not so sure about that either. So that might actually come out and be incorrect as well. And I wasn't really able to verify that before the stream, whether or not there actually were two responding officers or not, right? Then the cops waited. This is what everybody's really pissed off about now, right? So after all this shit happens, this guy Ramos goes in, he goes into a couple of classrooms and basically like holds up in there. And the police wait outside for about 80 minutes, so over an hour, right? And did not try to go apprehend this guy. And in the meantime, while they're outside waiting, he's fucking murdering people. He's murdering children, you know, and people were fucking pissed. And like the parents were like, of the kids were outside begging them to go in and apprehend the guy, and they wouldn't do it. And then a couple of the parents decided they were just going to go themselves because the fucking cops weren't doing their jobs. And the police like detained them. And one lady like fucking got handcuffed, right? While this dude is in the fucking school blowing people away, right? And yeah, people are pissed. I'd be pissed too. I'd be extremely pissed. If my child was in that school, holy fuck, I don't even know how I'd react. I'd probably be dead because the cops would have shot me by now because I would have been like fucking yelling and shit, right? So that's extremely fucked up, right? A couple of the parents decided they were like one lady actually like ran and just jumped the fence and went into the school apparently. Like that's something that I saw on CNN. There was a report of one of the parents just fucking like disobeyed orders and ran into the school to try to find her daughter. And I can't blame her. I would have done the same fucking thing, man. If your kid's there and the fucking cops aren't doing anything, like your kid's gonna die, right? Or fucking do something. Um, and then the police, but apparently the official story is they said they had the guy barricaded into a room. They said they had him trapped in a room, when in real life they didn't have him trapped. He barricaded himself in there, right? But they still wouldn't move in. And apparently one of the police officers was like yelling through the walls to try to find out if there were any kids still left alive in there. So one of the cops said, "Shout for help if you're alive," something like that. And so one of the kids that's in the classroom shouts for help, and then apparently that alerted this guy Ramos that this kid was still alive, and Ramos went over and shot the child, which is like, dude, oh my God, like that's fucking terrible. There was another report of a kid who was playing dead in the classroom and was smearing blood from one of his fellow students who was already dead onto himself so that he would look dead, so that he could play dead. That's absolutely horrible. These are like things you hear from like war stories, right? Like that thing I just said, smearing your blood on from one of your slain classmates. If I would have like that sounds like some shit that somebody had to do in World War II in order to like escape like a fucking massacre of their village or something, doesn't it? That sounds like some kind of like terrible story that like, oh, and the Nazis came and killed everyone in the village and I, was shot but I was alive and I just smeared blood on my face to make it look like I was dead. You know what I mean? It sounds like a story like that. And it's like, well, dude, this is real life. Like this actually fucking happened and it was like a 10-year-old. I mean, imagine that, God, that poor kid. That's fucking horrible. And I'm not chuckling because it's funny. I'm chuckling because it's horrible. Like, that poor kid, it's fucked up. It's fucked up, dude. And here's the thing, what's going to happen to those cops, right? Nothing. I can guarantee it right now. It might be bad enough that maybe the chief of police will resign, right? But what about the actual cops who were outside who made that call to fucking like cower like a bunch of fucking yellow bellied like I mean seriously, what the fuck? Like what's going to happen to those police officers who decided that they just weren't going to do what they're trained to do, you know? And nothing will happen to them. They're probably all going to get off just fine, you know, and there will be like no consequences for these people at all, you know. If there was justice of any kind, every single one of them would lose their jobs. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this is bad enough for them to serve prison time, but every single one of those people should not be a cops. They shouldn't be police officers. And here's the reason why, right? Because this is what cops are there for. Okay? Like all of the times that we hear like police shootings that are just fucking rampant all over the place. Oh, well, he was disobeying orders, like it seems like in this country cops will just shoot you at the drop of a fucking hat. And I know that's not true. It's not true, right? But we do have a massive problem with police violence, right? It very well does seem like they will fucking that they just murder people, when you give them any trouble at all, which is not exactly true, but I mean, come on, how many, I don't know, maybe I'm starting to think about it. Um, but we allow this. We allow this in our country. We've accepted the fact that police are allowed to kill people, and we've accepted it because the excuse they give us is that they're there to protect us, right? So we allow them to get away with it a lot of the time, right? A lot of the times when police murder people, when police shoot somebody and it turns out the person they shot wasn't really much of a danger to them or anyone else, we generally as a country are seem to be okay with letting that slide because the trade-off is, well, they're there to help us, right? But it turns out when the chips are down and they don't fucking help us, then people start thinking, well, why are we giving them these special privileges? Why are we letting them get away with like shooting people in the back, for example, when they're sitting in their cars? You remember that one? The what was his name? Castile. Guy was just in his car with his hands up. Cop shoots him in the fucking back, you know, because he said that he had a weapon in the car because he had a fucking license to own his weapon, and police like blew him away. Philando Castile, I think his name was. You know, like why do we allow that? You know what I mean? So that's yeah, that's the fucked up part about this entire thing. And admittedly people are really pissed. So the right wing in this country is kind of in damage control now over all of this because right wingers and Republicans and conservatives generally take the cops' side. Whenever you see police shootings like this, whenever you get police shootings and all this stuff, fucking um, Michael Brown and all these, whenever that happens, the right wing people, they always sort of come out of the woodwork to defend the cop, and they'll make any kind of fucking excuses that they can in order to justify the shooting and all that, right? But now they kind of can't really do that because the cops didn't do what they're supposed to fucking do. Like the excuse for that the right wing has in this country about the good guys with the guns will stop mass shootings. Well, the good guys with the guns were there and they didn't fucking do anything, right? So now they're kind of in panic mode, and you're starting to see, I don't know. It seemed like for a few days they didn't really have, a coherent message, right? And you started seeing things like this. So let me turn this on because I got this
I
video here.
advocate
Nope.
always for
Shut up. Shut up. All right. I want to show you this video. Let's see. Let's just make that a little bit bigger. This is Media Matters, so they're most likely not going to kill my stream over it. This is, um, let's see, 50 solutions that the people on Fox News in the last couple of days have proposed for mass shootings, and you'll notice one thing missing in their 50 solutions. So let's just play this. This is about a couple of minutes, and I thought that this was interesting.
I advocate always for an armed security guard,
armed school safety officer,
armed deputy,
arming teachers,
potentially arm and prepare and train teachers and other administrators,
armed school staffers,
bring in policemen,
training the students themselves,
retired military, retired law enforcement.
Seeing lots of proposals here for armed people of various types. It seems like their solution for gun violence is always more guns. Arming teachers, pretty fucking horrible. Anyway, we'll continue on here.
Enforcement. We can offer them tax breaks. If you give law enforcement the opportunity to impose martial law, we can guarantee safety and security.
Securing that
martial law. Wow, that's going a little far, don't you think? We'll just suspend all of your rights. Kind of like last time when I said, yeah, they'll just turn the schools into prisons. Well, why don't we just turn the entire fucking country into a prison? Ridiculous.
perimeter, kind of providing kind of a ring of steel.
You have the fences, you have the main administration building, and then you have wide gaps on either side. The fencing's not very high.
Where the doors locked, bulletproof glass.
All of these shootings have happened at the same time that we see religion and Christian values and Judeo.
Yep, you just need to believe harder, folks. Believe harder. In fact, you're not believing hard enough. It's your fault that all these psychopaths are out there, huh? You're not being, this is God punishing us for, like, I don't know, allowing abortion or something. It's fucking so ridiculous.
Christian values declining.
Anybody who decides that they want to do something like this should immediately know that attacking a school is a death sentence for them.
Kids are afraid of being the school snitch.
We have to stop letting these schools be
school snitch. It's the children's fault. There you go. It's their fault that these psychopaths show up with fucking, machine guns and blow them away and stuff because they don't want to be snitched. It's the school, the schoolyard code. Snitches get stitches, huh? Yeah, okay.
gun-free zones.
People need to put their phones down.
By the way, the school was not a gun-free zone. There were men with guns in that school, the resource officers and shit. Although apparently, I don't know, maybe there wasn't one at this school. Anyway.
And get to know the person next to them.
We have spent billions of dollars on COVID-related measures for our schools. Let's take some of that money and divert it over to hardening these soft targets.
A lot of these private schools, they take security way more serious.
Parents, take your children to church.
This private school, yeah, because you just have to be rich. I'm going to let the rest of these play, and then we'll comment on each one. Why don't we do that?
Anti-police narrative is forcing people not to call police.
A series of interlocking doors at the school entrance that are triggered by a tripwire, and it traps the shooter like a rat.
God is the answer to that.
There's a moral rot going on that we all need to dig in and try to address.
I vote for decreasing social media exposure.
We need to start focusing on mental health.
Tell us why you think it's important to pray in a moment like this.
It calls for faith and prayer.
Why is it that schools aren't protected in the same way that airports?
There are some people who don't want police officers in schools with guns because other people are triggered.
Assault rifle and enhanced body armor.
A notification system to let everybody in the school know what's happening.
A single point of entry.
I don't like talking about this stuff as it happens because I don't think it contributes anything positive.
Parents should be held accountable for raising their children properly.
Ballistic blankets.
We just don't have the resources to get law enforcement there quickly.
How about an executive order for these mental health facilities?
We have to start rebuilding this country and returning to God.
I arm myself everywhere I legally can.
It's up to you to protect yourself.
Okay, so let's just
It's up to you to protect yourself.
Nope. Let's pause it. All right.
To protect yourself.
Pause. Nope. Fuck you.
I legally can.
It's up to you to
pause. Okay. Let's take that and kind of go through these one by one. You notice what we're not seeing here, guys? We're not seeing gun control. Right? 50 solutions. This just blew me away. So this is from Media Matters, of course. We're really, really awesome when it comes to stuff like this. Every single thing they suggest, it's like all of this bullshit, except for the one thing that actually could have prevented the shooting was if the guy didn't have his guns, there wouldn't have been a shooting. Let's kind of go through a few of these. All right. An armed security guard. Well, there were armed security guards. There are already armed security guards at schools. So that's armed, the first three right off the bat. Number 4, armed teachers. Like I've said this yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, but Wednesday, and then also on, That's a dumb fucking idea. Arming your teachers is stupid as fuck. We don't have to go over that. You already know my position on that one. Same thing with armed school staffers. The janitor at your high school or whatever shouldn't have a shotgun. right? That's not his job. He doesn't have to be trained to be a fucking like sharpshooter or whatever, or to be a police officer. He's there to fucking clean up the lunchroom, right? Trained, train the students themselves. Yeah, why don't we just give all of the kids guns? I mean, there's no possible way that can go wrong, right? Like, can you imagine that? So I'm looking at number 8, train the students themselves. Can you imagine that? Like you're in class, you're doing your times tables or whatever, or I don't know what math class you're in, trigonometry, whatever the fuck that is. And suddenly the bell rings and they're like school shooter, and then all the kids get up and they run over to the closet, and like the doors open up and there's like a whole rack full of like fucking AK-47s or whatever. And then all the kids like get the guns and they're like, okay, form a firing line. And then, like, what, seriously? Like, are you fucking, it's the dumbest shit like ever. I mean, yeah, there's no way that that could go fucking wrong. Let's just give the students themselves guns. It's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. Okay. Moving on. 11, tax breaks. Of course, there's always going to be some fucking, because they're conservatives. They're conservatives, they're Republicans, they love tax breaks. So somebody's always going to try to worm that in there. Martial law, of course, number 12. We already talked about that. I mean, all right. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all about making the school safer, right? Yeah, well, maybe, but they're schools. They're not supposed to be prisons, right? We shouldn't. Here's the thing about that. It's like, yeah, your school should be safe, right? But these are never like, it's always like a guy walking into a school. It's never like somebody shooting through a window, shooting through a fence, jumping over a fence or whatever. He usually just walks to the front door. Usually they go to the front door and they shoot somebody who tries to stop them, right? So it's like, it's, I mean, yeah, that could prevent some things. Maybe we can't, maybe that might be something that we could do to, maybe put steel doors on the outside of your school. But the point is, you shouldn't have to do that. The point is, the school should not have to be a prison. There shouldn't have to be trap doors and like trip wires and like, a pit with fucking alligators outside of it. You know, that's sort of like, and you wouldn't have to do that if there was fucking gun control. It's like, which one of those is easier? Going back and retrofitting every school in the country to have like death traps and shit, you know, outside, and to make it there's only one entrance and exit, and to put like 20-foot walls over everything with spikes on the front. Maybe we could put an electric fence too around the school. Like either that or you pass a law saying, hey, you got to be 21 to buy a gun, and also you're not allowed to buy this assault rifle anymore. And also the magazines you buy have to be like, can't be high capacity, and there's a background check, and you got to wait a little while, and you need to have a license to have it, right? And we're gonna do like, we're gonna check your social media to make sure you're not like threatening to fucking shoot up any schools. How about that? Right? How about, I mean, it's really just like, it's like I said before, like it's an excuse that you would hear from an addict. Anyway, 19, Judeo-Christian values. That's the same with number 31 up there, God. Number 35, pray. Number 36, faith and prayer. It's like, yeah, you just have to pray hard enough. And what does that kind of make it sound like, right? Kind of makes it sound like it's our fault. Like the people that were going to that school just didn't have enough faith. And that's whenever I hear anybody say shit like that, that's what it sounds like to me, right? It sounds like, oh, you just need to pray because you weren't praying hard enough. You didn't believe hard enough. So it makes it kind of sound like you're blaming the victim, you know? And my response to that is, fuck you. That's my response. Shove that up your ass. How about instead of praying, you pass a fucking law and actually do something about it? Because that's the other thing. When you just say, just pray, all that does is just remove the responsibility from you and put it on the victim. Ridiculous, right? Ah, Jesus Christ. 21 school snitches. Yeah, okay, right. It's the children's fault there, right? 22, schools, stop letting schools be gun-free zones. Of course, the school was not a gun-free zone. It's not a gun-free zone when you have a police officer with a gun on the campus. Okay, that literally means there's guns allowed there. Just depends on who's allowed to hold them. Right? Ridiculous. 23, put your phone down. Yeah, that's another one. Oh, that's like blaming the kids. Oh, the kids spend too much time on their cell phones with their Minecrafts and their Facebooking and all that shit. Not enough time, like, praying to God. Put down your phone. The fuck out of here. 24, divert corona relief funds. That was Kellyanne Conway was the one that said that. And, she kind of doesn't really have any moral standing to talk about you know, um, not only school shootings or mass shootings, but especially when it comes to coronavirus relief, because she was part of the administration that allowed the virus to get out of fucking control. And maybe if they would have had some corona relief funds to begin with, we wouldn't have had a 2 fucking year long pandemic. I digress. 25, send your kid to private school. There you go. Yeah. That just basically, what does that really mean? It means like, oh, you're too fucking poor. So too bad. The rich people get to be in private schools where they have security and there's never any fucking mass shootings. Right? But you're poor ass. You just need to work harder. Yeah, fuck you. Okay, number 26, take your children to church. Yeah, that's another one. Pray harder. 27, fight this anti-police narrative. Excuse me, did BLM cause this mass shooting? Right? Like, wait, so the cops decided in Uvalde they decided to not enter the school because what? Because they're upset that people are protesting police violence? Is that why they decided not to go save the lives of children who are being fucking murdered? It's the dumbest shit ever. Ah, man. Moving down a little bit, because all of these next ones are like, God, address moral rot, which is the exact same thing as God, and is the exact same thing as pray. And then decrease social media exposure is the exact same thing as, stop getting on your phone. Although, something there, I might actually agree a little bit with that. Unfortunately, there's no way of enforcing that. I actually think it's a good idea to prevent children from using social media, like having their own profiles and shit like that. I really think it would make the country a much better place if you weren't allowed to say have a Facebook profile until you were 18. I really do think that would be a really great thing. If you weren't allowed to have a YouTube channel until you were 18, like I really think that would be awesome. But there's no way to enforce that. There's no way to enforce that because, you have the freedom of speech in this country. So if you want to create a social media, account and post a bunch of pictures of yourself doing stupid shit, that is your right. If you want to create a YouTube channel and, draw pictures while you talk about politics, that is your right. If you want to make a TikTok thing where you're fucking like doing stupid crap in a store that's going to get you arrested or whatever, that is your right. You have a right to do this stuff, so the government is not allowed to tell you not to do it. But I really do think I think that would do a lot to limit some of the radicalization of these children, like we were talking about with the Buffalo shooter. But that's unfortunately a solution that is just simply not viable without taking away people's rights. So that'll never fucking happen. Um, don't be triggered. Number 38. What the fuck does that mean? Don't be triggered. How is what? Don't be triggered by what? By guns? So was this mass shooter this week or the one last week or the one the week before that? Did they go on their massacres because they were triggered by the libs or something? It makes zero fucking sense. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. Moving on down, you get the idea, blah, 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 blah. Raise your children property. So basically everything, they have solutions for everything except the one thing that will actually stop mass shootings. Let's turn this shit off and let's get rid of that. And let me put this down in the chat for you guys if you want to watch that later. If you haven't actually seen this for yourself, there you go. You can check that out at your convenience. Anyway, so that's fucking ridiculous and horrible. I saw another one here. This is some funny shit. Maybe you guys might get a kick out of this. This is from Skywatch TV. And let me put this down. I'm getting this from a Reddit channel here. So this next thing I'm about to open, this is a very short video. And let me just get this going.
How is it that
here, quiet settings. Let's make that a little bit smaller. This is from Skywatch TV, which is sort of like a, there's sort of like a conspiracy theory thing, but they seem to also be very preachy. Like, it seems to be like a conspiracy theory website, but focused also on like, biblical stuff, like half conspiracy and then like half sermons and preaching. Let's see what this guy has to say about the shooter here, right?
Statistically, hit their target 20 to 30% of the time.
Wait, rewind that a little bit. There we go.
For the first time in a real life situation. Police who are trained for situations where they might need to use their firearm in a live fire situation, statistically, hit their target 20 to 30% of the time, even less if they're being fired at in return. Soldiers, likewise, miss their target most of the time, especially if they're taking return fire. So how is it these young men were so accurate? It doesn't make any sense. Conspiracy theorists will say it's because they were trained. This was a black op. This was a false flag.
False flag.
No,
out of here.
I think the instructor in that course was correct. The children, the teachers, law enforcement in Uvalde, Texas, encountered a demon Tuesday. One who's done this before.
A demon. So it wasn't, it was because Satan is controlling people. I can't fucking believe this shit. I wish I made that up. The thing that I just showed you guys. This is, and I went to the actual website, the Skywatch TV website. It's a gold mine of ridiculous conspiracy horseshit. I think we're going to have to revisit it here pretty soon. Unbelievable. It's like, oh, okay, it's actually Satan which is causing all of this stuff. No, it's not, the fact that it's a disturbed kid who was bullied and or maybe got radicalized by like Nazis or something, or just, maybe he actually was mentally ill, whatever, and was able to get his hands on a high-powered weapon. It's not that. It's not because of any failings of our society, right? Of the conservative policies which run everything. It's because Satan. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. The dumb. We're addicts, folks. We're gun addicts. That's what it is. It's like every time I see one of these, it just reminds me of a fucking like crack addict who's like making an excuse as to why he's not going to go clean this week. It's just like somebody shooting up heroin and saying like, I'm a functioning addict. Oh, I need it, but I don't really need it. I could stop. Yeah, okay. Then why don't you fucking stop? Oh, okay. Anyway, so here's something I wanted to show you guys also. This is, let me see. Let me go to my images. Can I open 2 instances of this? Hang on a second. I'm going to try something real fast here, folks. Can I open another? Because I have my little thing with my notes, and I'm wondering if I can open it twice. Yes, I can. Okay, that'll help. Let's see. Let's move this over here. All right. And let's just make that, no, let's move that over there. Okay. Here is a tweet from Jordan Peterson, who is, his fucking like patronizing. Hang on, let me just make this big. Nope. Make it super big. Get rid of that. There we go. So, and then let me just increase the size of that. So let's turn on my laptop window again. So this is Jordan Peterson's patronizing dipshit fucking tweet that proves he's basically a fucking feckless coward who's too chicken shit to stand up to the right wing. You know, his incredibly bad take on these shootings. We have to agree to never publicize the names of school shooters and other publicity-seeking mass murderers. This is not a gun or even a mental health issue, in quotes. It's an issue of malevolent narcissists weaponizing mass media. Stop publishing their names and the problem will end. You know, Jordan Peterson is sort of like, you know what he reminds me of? It's sort of like when the school principal like gets a ticket and it turns out that the sheriff that gave him the ticket was like the bully that used to dunk his head in like the fucking toilet and shit when they were kids. And he just like sort of stammers and like pulls out all of like the fucking 5 syllable like, bonus Scrabble words and shit. But, he's just sort of like this ineffectual, like scared fucking like coward. That's Jordan Peterson, right? Like, oh, it's not a gun or even a mental health issue. Well, what fucking is it then, right? A crazy person got a gun and went and killed a bunch of people. How the fuck is a crazy person getting a gun and killing 14 people not a gun or a mental health issue, right? It's like, oh, it's immediate. Stop publishing their names. If we never published any of the names of any of the people that actually did this, how is that going to stop mass shootings? It's like basically Jordan Peterson here is just saying ignore it and it'll go away. Stop publicizing it. It'll go away. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's the most cowardly fucking thing. And here's the thing, right? Jordan Peterson knows the solution to gun violence is gun control. Jordan Peterson lives in Canada. They have sufficient gun control in Canada. You don't have mass shootings in Canada. When was the last time there was a mass shooting in Canada? When? In the last 10 years. How many have they had? How many school shootings have they had in Canada? I can tell you they haven't had fucking like 238 or however many it is that we've had in the United States, right? They've probably had like one, if even that. All right. So fuck this guy. He's a coward, just like all the rest of them. Goddamn coward. Moving on. Let's move that down now. I got to see if I can do something about that. Okay. Anyway, so now we're like, basically seeing them. Oh, wait, am I, oh shit, hang on a second. Yeah, okay, laptop window. All right, good. All right. So, yeah. Now we're basically seeing the right wing in this country just sort of try to regain the narrative back, right? Because they've spent the last couple of days just sort of flailing in the wind because they don't have a sufficient answer because all of their usual go-to answers when it comes to mass shootings like don't really work in this situation, right? Because the cops definitely fucked it up. The person who, got the gun bought them legally. He wasn't like a fucking like, criminal or anything like that. He didn't have a history of mental illness. They couldn't like, all of their go-to shit, all of their go-to excuses have fallen flat. So what are they doing now? They're basically trying to now link in mass shootings with the culture war attack against gay and trans people that we've been experiencing for the last year, which was actually getting them a lot of momentum, you know. And they were kind of hoping, I think they were trying to ride that all the way to the midterms. And it's funny because a lot of like they've sort of lost momentum now on the midterms, right? Because, they were really motivated and they were using basically anti-trans hate in order to motivate people. But a couple of things have happened since in the last month. The first thing we had was the fucking like leaked, you know, the leaked decision for against Roe versus Wade. That motivated the left a lot, and now we have these massive mass shootings, which is motivating people even more in order to like get out there. And when people are motivated, by whatever reason, in this case, it's outrage, right? They go out and vote. And this is why the right wing is really shitting their pants right now. They're shitting their pants because they don't have control of the narrative going into the midterms. And so now they're basically trying to get it back. They're hoping people will forget about the mass shootings and they'll forget about Roe versus Wade or whatever. And so what they're trying to do now, the strategy seems to try to redirect it back towards anti-trans bigotry, like they've been doing for the last, year and a half, right? So we saw Paul Gosar, who's a Republican, congressman, right? I think he's in the House of Representatives. Got into a little Twitter war with somebody, and somebody said to him, "This guy, talking about the Uvalde shooter, this guy is probably, what did he say? He's probably the kind of trash that supports your policies, or like, I wonder if he's the kind of guy the kind of trash that supports your policies, something like that." Somebody was, basically fucking hate tweeting at Paul Gosar, and then Paul Gosar responds with this. Let me turn back on. Let's just move down to Paul Gosar's tweet. Okay. Open that up. And let's go back to this. Turn on my laptop window again. This is Paul Gosar's tweet. Let's make that a little bit bigger. "We already know, fool. It's a transsexual leftist illegal alien named Salvador Ramos. It's apparently your kind of trash." Dr. Representative Paul Gosar, who is one of the people that we have elected in our country to create laws for us, spreading misinformation that the Uvalde school shooter was not only an illegal alien, but also trans. Neither of those things are true, right? Salvador Ramos was born in North Carolina, so he was not an illegal immigrant, right? He also was not a trans person. I mean, he's dead now, but he was not a trans person either, right? So where did this come from? Candace Owens did the same thing. Let's scroll down a little bit. Candace Owens did the same thing. Here's one of her tweets that she wrote. And I'm taking screenshots of all this because I don't want to drive traffic to these people, because fuck these people. I mean, if you really want to go look it up for yourself, feel free. One thing I always notice about right-wingers like this is that they tweet like 700,000 times a fucking day, so good luck trying to find any of them, right? But hang on, let me just choose this color here real quick. This is, of course, Candace Owens. "What drives an 18-year-old to murder innocent children? I don't know, but judging by the photos of him cross-dressing, we can assume there were plenty of signs that he was mentally disturbed and abused by adults in his life. Societal cowardice ignored those plenty of signs." Right? Mentally disturbed and abused by adults. Because remember, for the last, 3 or 4 months, the whole narrative on the right wing is that children in schools are being groomed, right? They're calling people who want children to have the ability to basically come out as trans and not be persecuted for it. They're calling them groomers. That's been a thing, we've talked about this before in last couple streams. That's the main push. That's basically their master fucking plan now, in order to smear people on the left and, take away trans rights, trying to basically say that everybody who supports trans rights is a groomer, and that these children are being taken advantage of by predators. When you say groomer, that's what basically a groomer is: somebody who cultivates an underage child so that when they turn 18, they can have sex with them, right? That's basically a groomer, right? trying to say everybody who supports gay rights, who supports trans rights, is grooming these people so that they can take advantage of them later. That's the smear, they call it pedojacketing, right? And trying to link mass shootings in with that somehow. So when this was, pointed out to her that Salvador Ramos was not trans, right, and also was not an illegal alien, and she doubles down on it. She posts this next. This is her next tweet after that one we just read. Everybody is always in search of a root cause after an unspeakable tragedy takes place when the root cause is all around us. Our society is sick. Refuse to acknowledge mental illness when it so evidently surrounds you. Congrats, you're a part of the root cause. Mental illness. Now, and then here are the pictures that she shows here. What does she show here? A pregnant man, right? And a woman who is overweight, who is from the body positivity movement. That's what we're looking at here, right? The pregnant man there is a trans man, right? Because, trans men can still get pregnant. The woman on the cover of Cosmopolitan is, yeah, like one of the, body positivity, one of the things. Don't be ashamed to be fat or whatever, right? Now, whether you believe in either of those things, whether you support those things or not, right? I think it's safe to say that neither of those people in those pictures are mentally ill, right? I mean, you could even say that bigotry itself is a form of mental illness, could you not? I think you could make that argument, right? So basically, that's what she's trying to say. And now, how many mass shooters over the last year have been trans people? I'm going to straight out say zero is what I'm going to say. How many people who were mass shooters were part of the body positivity movement? Positivity movement, excuse me. I am literate. I can speak. Right? I am articulate. Positivity movement. How many of those people were mass shooters? I'm going to say zero as well. How many mass shooters over the last year or even, 5, 6 years were of the political bent that trans people and people of the body positivity movement should be murdered? I think we could say quite a lot. At least one, the one from last week. So, what is Candace Owens trying to say? Is she trying to say that the fact that these people exist is what drives right wingers into homicidal rages and makes them go crazy and makes them murder people? That's really the only way this tweet makes sense. Is the fact that trans people and people who are not ashamed to be fat exist, and that is what's triggering the right wing and making them kill people because they can't fucking handle it. I mean, that's obviously not what Candace Owens is trying to say. She's trying to blame these people for mass shooting. But anyway, we should maybe do a stream on body positivity, because I have mixed feelings on that myself as someone who is overweight and has been overweight his entire life. But we could talk about that later. Candace Owens, double down again. Lastly, if you think the government has just spent 2 years masking, forced vaccinating, and threatening your children, driving up youth suicide rates and drug overdoses, if you think that government wants gun control to keep them safe, you are utterly delusional, not 1 inch. Now let's look at what she just said right here. Right. Masking, forced vaccinating, and threatening your children. Right. No one has force vaccinated children. The government has not force vaccinated children, right? The government has not gone and said, if you don't get a vaccination for your child, then you or your child goes to prison. That's what forced vaccination means, right? There has not been forced vaccination in this country at all. If there was, we'd have a fucking 100% vaccination rate. We don't, okay? The reason why the goddamn virus is still out there, the reason why is because it mutated, because fucking people were too conservatives were too fucking stupid to get vaccinated, and now it mutated, and now it's like the latest strain. The vaccine isn't good enough anymore. We got to wear fucking masks again, right? So fuck you, Candace Owens, right? Luckily the latest strain is not killing people at the same rate that the earlier Delta strain was. Okay, the Alpha and the Delta strain was. Luckily for us, it's generally safe enough now if you're triple vaccinated that you can walk around without a mask, right? No fucking thanks to you, Candace Owens. You dumb bitch. She deserves it. If people think I'm like, I'm pissed when I hear shit like this. You know why? Because someone's going to read this tweet, right? And they're going to believe now that the government is force vaccinating children, and they will believe it now for the rest of their lives. And there's someone's going to read this fucking tweet. They're going to get that idea in their head. And now that, this misinformation has been spread, and they're going to spread it around more, and people will vote depending on this, right? And shit will not get done because Candace fucking Owens convinced people that the government is force vaccinating your children, right? Fuck her. Seriously. Driving up suicide rates. There's bullshit. No fucking kid out there kills themselves because they have to wear a mask in school, right? Because they had to get a vaccination, right? That's bullshit. Okay? That's fucking bullshit. Just get the fuck out of here. Like, unbelievable. And look at also what these things are, what she's talking about. Vaccines, right? Wearing a mask. These are like things that people do to like protect themselves from a fucking pandemic, right? Like, these are really the only ways we have of preventing the spread of disease, like besides just like not going outside. Okay, so the things people are doing to protect themselves, she's demonizing them. The right wing in this country has lost all moral like standing on everything. They have no room to talk about shit anymore. So whenever you hear someone from the conservatives or whatever talk about moral values or any of that or whatever, what's right and wrong, fuck all of them. They After what happened last year, the last 2 years, and the shit they're saying now, they have zero moral standing at all for anything. The response, anytime a right winger from now to the end of time tries to pull the fucking moral majority card on you should be a big ass middle finger right in their face. Because it's bullshit, dude. Fuck you. You know, now the government wants to keep gun control, keep them safe. You're utterly delusional. Which one of us is fucking delusional here, folks, right? That's the last thing, gun control to keep people safe. What are they afraid of? She's basically leaning into the conspiracy theory that they want to take your guns away so that they can declare martial law and all that, so that they can take over and round us up into FEMA camps and all of that shit. God damn this fucking grifter, dude. Jesus Christ. Then she went, so now she's arguing with people. Like, if you follow this Twitter thread, people are telling her to fuck off, etc. Blah blah blah, and she doubles down on it again. Then she posts this because somebody named Ken Barbie here, which I'm gonna look up Ken Barbie because Ken Barbie looks kind of awesome. Ken Barbie says, because clearly cross-dressing is the issue here, not gun control. Candace, take your performative ass on somewhere else. I'm assuming she meant somewhere else, but she just take your performative ass on somewhere, I guess. I'm not really know what that means, but then Ken Barbie, so then Candace Owens tweets back at Ken Barbie, oh, look, guys, it's Ken Barbie. When Ken Barbie isn't busy telling us that we shouldn't talk about obvious signs of mental illness in our society, you can find him on Instagram documenting his plastic surgeries and drag queen glow-ups. First off, misgendering Ken Barbie because Candace Owens is a piece of shit. Secondly, you notice how she just completely ignored the response? She didn't mention gun control. See, this is another tactic that you get from the right wing. It's basically it's a debate tactic that when you don't have any type of actual like response to a question or a challenge in a debate, instead you attack somebody's character, right? That ad hominem. And that's what she's doing here. She completely ignored gun control. She didn't even address the thing that Ken Barbie said, because she doesn't have a response, because gun control actually would stop these fucking mass murderers. Instead, she attacks Kim Barbie directly, right? Because Candace Owens is a piece of shit. Let's remember that. Candace Owens is a piece of shit. Maybe I should rename this stream Candace Owens is a piece of shit. Anyway, another one. So now Twitter is basically putting this disclaimer here because Candace Owens is spreading misinformation, right? And let's see what her response is. I never once shared any fake photo of the shooter. This is entirely made up storyline. Instead, people keep sharing a fake photo, insisting it's the one I'm referencing in an effort to restrict my discussion of mental illness and the dangerous rise of gender ideology. And Twitter is now backing up this lie as usual because they have so many mentally deranged individuals who perpetuate dangerous gender theories. This is true. She did not share, as far as I can see, unless she deleted the tweet, which she may have. She did not share a photo of these transgendered women that are being shared around, right? But it says she didn't share it. But read what this says here. Photos referenced by conservative commenter Candace Owens in a recent tweet are of a transgender individual. So it doesn't actually say she shared the photo. It says she referenced a photo, right? So, first off, you notice up here, I never once shared any fake photo. That's another debate tactic. When you basically get called out and get your ass handed to you on a silver platter with all the trimmings, like what just happened right here, you don't actually, what you do is you make up a lie about the attack that someone is attacking you with, right? And then when it's proved that what you're saying is a lie actually is a lie because you made it up, then that puts a seed of doubt in the person reading it. So now someone's going to read this. One of Candace Owens's followers is going to read this and say, "Hey, that's right. She didn't share any photo, right? It's all bullshit. They're all just out to get her." When in real life, nobody said she shared a fucking photo. She said she referenced a photo because that's what she did, right? She referenced a photo of a transgendered woman that was being spread around by, the right wing and stuff like that, and incorrectly assumed that photo was real when it wasn't, and then went on a fucking like 6 tweet, like, anti-trans triade and tried to like blame mass shootings on them. So Candace Owens was wrong and a complete load of she's just complete fucking like misinformation here, right? She's a garbage human being is what she is. Candace Owens is like the low, like, you have like your top tier right wing grifters, like fucking like Tucker Carlson is currently at the top. And then under him you have like a couple of other people like Laura Ingraham and like fucking Sean Hannity. And then like you have below them people like fucking Alex Jones, like those sort of bottom scrapers. Like that's where Candace Owens is. Candace Owens is like a fucking bottom feeder who has to sell. She's sort of like a younger version of what the fuck was that? God, I can't remember her name, but basically she's like somebody who has to say like outlandish shit to get herself in the news because then she can sell more books and get more views on her. That's what she is. She's like a bottom feeding outrage poster, you know. Fuck Candace Owens. But anyway, I wanted to point that out because, this is how these things spread around right now. Where did Paul Gosar and where did Candace Owens get this idea that the shooter was trans? Well, it came from 4chan, right? And because basically what happened is that, people on 4chan and stuff started taking advantage of this, right? Very shortly after the shooting, and kind of got to work and started spreading misinformation. Why don't we jump into that for a little bit? But let's read a couple of comments here. We're at 12:30. Actually, you know what? We don't really have that much left. So why don't we just get through this really quick and then I'll read all the comments at the end. Why don't we do it like that? Okay. Anyway, so people on 4chan and stuff and other sort of right wingers, they started spreading around pictures of a trans woman who lives in New York named Sabrina, right? And Sabrina has not given out her last name, but here's an article here. Let me just copy this. I'll put it down in the chat for y'all. Basically, this trans woman named Sabrina was, what they did is they linked to her Reddit profile, and basically somebody said like, here's the shooter's Reddit, and went on and started like, you know, claiming that this trans woman who kind of has a somewhat passing resemblance to the guy Ramos, the actual shooter, right? And so people start harassing this woman named Sabrina on Reddit, and she posts a couple of things back, basically just paraphrasing that article. She posts a couple things back and says, "Well, no, that's obviously not me. I don't even live anywhere close to that. And plus, the shooter is dead and I'm still alive. So how the fuck can I be the shooter?" And then people were like, "Hey, I need more proof. What proof do you have that this is actually you in this photo?" And so she posts more photos and all this other shit. And it's like, apparently that got around, and that's how, like, it got around so far that, like, our fucking elected representatives are retweeting this stuff, right? What does that mean? That means somebody on either Paul Gosar himself or somebody on Paul Gosar's staff, like, either was on 4chan, but they're probably not on 4chan because the CEO of Gab retweeted this misinformation too. So let me open up this one. This one I think actually is worth sharing, so I'll put this down in the chat for you guys too. This is the CEO of Gab. Let's turn on the window again. Make that a little bit bigger. This is Andrew Torba, CEO of Neo-Nazi Gab, amplifying a baseless post wrongly accusing a random trans person on Reddit of being the Uvalde shooter. And you can kind of see what he posted there. Here's the nose, which is also this guy, that's his handle. Looks like the news won't be covering the shooter after today. Posting a picture of someone who is not the actual shooter. That's fucked up. I'll put that down in there for you guys to follow. There you go. Let's see. There was another person, another trans woman, which I will not list the name, but you can find it in that article. And basically, one commenter on Reddit said, as this was going on, as people were like, challenging Sabrina to prove who she was and all that, one commenter on Reddit said, even after, right, it turned out that Sabrina was not the shooter, and Sabrina was able to prove that she was not the shooter. One of the comments said this: "The left started the rumor on Twitter to make it look like Twitter is only full of racist, fascist, transphobes to discredit Twitter because Elon Musk bought it. But we not ready for that conversation." And I wanted to kind of point that little comment out there because it's like, you would say like, okay, well, who gives a shit what some random fucking moron on Reddit says, right? But it kind of points out the mentality to me of like, so that comment, this was started by the left, kind of illustrates the conspiracy theory mindset, right? When a conspiracy theorist is confronted with evidence that flies in the face of their conspiracy theory, 9 times out of 10 they double down on it. And that new evidence becomes evidence of the conspiracy, right? And that's exactly what just happened with that commenter right there, right? Oh, it turns out that this person actually wasn't the shooter. Oh, well, the left must have done this. Obviously, this was leftists setting up the good, clean Christian folk on Twitter because they're mad because Elon Musk bought it, and Elon Musk is a Republican now, and he's going to let Trump back onto Twitter. So obviously this is all a plot. Just think about it. I mean, that's basically what the guy just fucking said right there, right? Think about how that sort of, I mean, if that isn't fucking mental disease, then what is, right? Seriously, like, if anything, this conspiracy theory shit, right-wing conspiracy theories themselves can lead to mental illness. Like, I I think we should counter with that. Whenever somebody like Candace Owens says that, that trans rights and trans people are mentally ill, it's like, no, the real mental illness are like your followers and fans who think all this shit is a conspiracy theory. Seriously. I think anybody out there trying to get their, their doctorate or whatever, this would be a good field to study the mental illness of conspiracy theories. Anyway, this was also shared by Facebook group. Oh wait, before that, so this got around. There was a somewhat famous rapper named Boozy Badass who retweeted this as well. And he tweeted with the comment, "Knew you was a fag." That's what he wrote. And I don't mean to just say the F slur there, but I think sometimes it's worth saying in order to emphasize how horrible these people actually are. Boozy Badass has a history of homophobia on the internet. In particular, seems to have beef with Lil Nas and has been sort of in a public feud with Lil Nas over the fact that Lil Nas is out and out proud. He's out of the closet and proud of who he is and not afraid to make music that, you know, he's not hiding that he's gay and is in fact celebrating it through his music. And apparently Boozy Badass can't handle that. So always giving Lil Nas shit, kind of fits right in with the conservative mindset there, right? Anyway, this was also shared by a Facebook group called, what the fuck were they called? North Florida Patriots, right? Who spread this around. And the owner of the North Florida Patriots, after he found out that the whole thing was a lie, that he was being manipulated into sharing misinformation, instead decided to blame it on the left. And his comment was this. Let me find it. I got it right here. We won't be lectured by people looking to make this shooting into a political issue and turn it into a gun grab. That really kind of blew me away there, because that was kind of the same thing that they said to Beto O'Rourke. So if you noticed, was it Beto O'Rourke or was it Pete Buttigieg? Hang on, I think it might have been. Was it Pete Buttigieg? So I think it was Beto O'Rourke. So let me see. Beto crashed. Yeah, okay. So there was a press conference 3 days ago where the governor of Texas, Abbott, was up there with his usual crew, and it wasn't really a press conference; it was more of a town hall. And Beto O'Rourke, right, who was like basically a candidate for governor, crashed his town hall and basically called him out for it and said, "Hey, you fucking caused this and all this," because he kind of enabled it. The Greg Abbott signed a bill. We talked about this last time, that allows 18-year-old kids to buy firearms. And it just so happens that the shooter, this particular shooter, Ramos, bought his firearms shortly after his 18th birthday. Apparently, it was the first thing he wanted to do on his 18th birthday, was go buy a bunch of guns. And before that, you had to be 21 in order to buy guns in Texas. And thanks to this law that the GOP in Texas and, drafted, and the governor of Texas signed off on, it made it that much easier for this mass shooting to happen. I'm not going to open that up. Basically, just Beto O'Rourke just gets up in his face and starts saying that you caused this, this is your problem, and then all of the Republicans start shutting him down and all this other shit, right? And one of the things that somebody says is that you're turning this into a political issue, and that's like a kind of another thing that you get from the right wing all the time. You're trying to politicize this. You're trying to, just let these families grieve, right? That's another sort of deflection. That's another, I guess you would say, debate tactic. That's another debate tactic. The how dare you kind of attack, where like someone will, if you're debating somebody and they bring up some shit about your character, and you always say some, how dare you try to say blah blah blah, like the moral outrage attack, which what it does is that it diverts from the subject and implies that the person that you're, responding to did something wrong, and they somehow crossed a line. Like somehow Better O'Rourke crossed a line by going to this town hall, which town halls are there so that people can talk at them, are they not? He waited in line and got up in front of the microphone like everybody fucking else, didn't he? So how come he wasn't allowed to speak, right? Somehow it's Better O'Rourke's fault for bringing this up, because he's politicizing the fucking shooting and all that shit. You know, Never mind the fact that the shit that he's saying is true. It's just another way of diverting away. It's when you don't have an effective answer to the challenge. When you don't, when you're not able to address what the person's actually saying, it's another way of trying to attack their character. So that's sort of how dare you attack. It's sort of like a variation on ad hominem. Essentially, you're essentially implying that the person, you know, did something morally wrong by even bringing the subject up, which is of course bullshit, right? So yeah, if you haven't seen that yet, I'm not going to link to it, but I encourage, check it out. Better O'Rourke is, I mean, he's not like the most progressive person ever, but definitely a much better choice for voters in Texas. If you live in Texas, I encourage you vote for him. At least the guy seems to want to do the right thing, right? I mean, he's as progressive as someone in Texas running for office possibly can be in order to actually win. So, I don't know. We could talk about Better O'Rourke later. I don't really know much about him, to be honest, but he seems like a somewhat decent person. Anyway, this same Facebook page, let's open this up. I want to actually show you their Facebook page. This is North Florida Patriots, right? Let's turn on this again. We can make this a little bit bigger, actually. I'm just sort of, oh, that's the wrong one. We should go to laptop window. There we go. This is North Florida Patriots, right? They've since taken that post down, but I wanted to show you something else that they're focusing on, just to get the kind of idea that these are the kinds of people we're talking about here. Their latest post here says, "Attention parents." And they posted a big list of books that libraries in Florida have. And let's read what they say here, okay? Here's a book watch list containing many of the books that are in SJSCD libraries. I'm assuming that's the District of Florida, whatever. And links for your convenience. Books that are sexually explicit and have no place in front of children. Some go into graphic detail of rape and incest. They push for normalizing transgenderism, gender confusion, abortion, and have an agenda of critical race theory BLM narratives. Additional resources provided in comments where you can read excerpts and see images. So then we look at some of the books. These are the books they want to ban. What do we got here? Sissy, a coming of gender story, right? Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, that one sounds interesting. Our Class is a Family. Basically Vampire Academy. It must be a little too sexy for them guys. Sex, a book for teens, and an uncensored guide to your body, sex, and safety. Probably talks about safe sex, how you can have sex without getting pregnant or catching an STD, something like that. Woke, a guide to social justice. So yeah, basically these are the kinds of people we're talking about here. People that want to ban books, right? People that are here we go, Girl to Girl by Julianne Peters. That's basically the Florida, the North Florida Patriots. These are the people that want to ban books. They think CRT is this big horrible thing, and you see what we're talking about here. There was one picture I wanted to show you guys here because this kind of got to me, because they were spreading this misinformation of that the shooter was a trans woman, and then earlier on in their stream here, let's see, did they take it down? There was a picture that I thought, here we go. North Florida Patriots, when you accidentally send your kid to public school. Kind of posting anti-trans memes here, So these are the people we're dealing with. Is there a way to report this stuff? No. Can I report this for being let's see, report post. I'm gonna report this post for hate speech. And then we're gonna say sex or gender identity. And then we're gonna submit that. You know why? Because fuck these people, that's why. Okay. What would I like to do? I'm done. Let's turn this fucking shit off. Get rid of that. So yeah, you can kind of see, it illustrates how this type of misinformation can start and just sort of worm its way through social media. And before you know it, fucking politicians are saying this shit on national TV and tweeting it to their hundreds of thousands of followers, right? It really illustrates how and why it's important to stand against this kind of thing, to call people out for this stuff, right? Engage with people, okay? Because, you know, it ruins people's lives. The trans women who are falsely identified here are dealing with harassment and all this, having to make their fucking profiles private, that kind of thing. Probably going to end up dealing with death threats, shit like that. And there's going to be people out there now who are going to believe until the day they die that this Uvalde shooter was a trans woman and that it was all a setup by the fucking Democrats or whatever in order to force CRT into your kid's school or some ridiculous, silly ass bullshit like that, right? And it's basically tearing the country apart you know, in so many words. Shit like this is terrible. I mean, if we can't even get our country together, if we can't even bring people together to agree that allowing someone to buy a gun so that he can go blow away children is a bad thing, then what the fuck do we even have a country for? Maybe we should just let the South go. The next time the South wants to secede for whatever reason, I say we just let them go. Fuck them. Bye. See you later. Adios. Bye bye Florida. Bye bye Georgia. Bye bye fucking Texas. Get the fuck out. And then why don't we just build a big ass wall around all of them so that when they try to sneak over the border so that they can take our jobs, right, we can stop them or whatever. Why don't we fucking do that? Because obviously these people don't give a shit about making the world, about anything except their ability to own a fucking weapon and murder people. I don't know. If I were cynical, that's what I would believe. Of course, I don't actually believe that. Of course, I don't actually believe that. Please don't think that I really want the country to break up because I don't. I'm just frustrated. I'm just frustrated. It's fucking frustrating to read this stuff. And it's like, god damn, people are so fucking stupid. They're so stupid and misled, and then you see somebody like fucking Paul Gosar or Candace Owens or fucking what's that moron with the little face? You know what I'm talking about? Like the fucking America First asshole, or you know what I mean? To see these people just exploiting it, making money off of it, and laughing all the way to the fucking bank as the shit that the people they exploit go on fucking murder rampages. And then everybody wonders why our country's so fucked up. Everybody wonders why like a pussy grabbing fucking like used car salesman who lies his ass off wins an election and then like can like separate people from their children and like can like take people's children's away and like nobody fucking care. Like seriously, this is the if you're wondering why America is so screwed up, we just pointed it out to you just right now. Right. It's because of shit like this. It's because we can't even share a basic narrative as to what's really truly wrong in this country because of the right wing, because of conservatives. Let's never forget, the actual reason why it's because of conservatives, right? Is there an equivalent left-wing grifter like Candace Owens who's spreading lies? Who? Tell me who, right? The equivalent people on the left wing seem to be telling the truth. When you get somebody like Rachel Maddow, for example, Rachel Maddow doesn't really spread lies, and when she's incorrect, she like sometimes they'll be incorrect, but they don't spread hate and lies around, right? Are there people on the left wing who accidentally like assume things and maybe spread misinformation? Yeah, maybe sometimes you might see it. Like there was a thing a few days ago on Reddit about how one of the fathers who was father of one of the children at this school shooting, this latest school shooting, was like a gun supporter. People were giving that guy hate. Yeah, that's wrong, right? But you didn't see politicians then tweeting that shit, did you? Right? Fake news in general seems to like not spread very far on the left. And it's because people on the left are simply more intelligent. That's why I think so. I think that's the reason. I think people on the left are simply more intelligent, less motivated by hate, more likely to look up if a story is real or not before they spread it around and fuck up someone's life. That's the real fucking reason, in my opinion. Anyway, thank you for listening to me rant for fucking 2 hours here. Let's read some comments and then we'll call it a day because I am hungry and I have a headache from screaming like a maniac for the last hour. So, very energetic stream this time. But anyway, let's see what we got here. Dynacat, my neighbor is playing Make the Neighbors homicidal music. I'm sorry. I don't know, man. Sorry to hear that. Maybe you could, maybe you could buy your neighbor a nice pair of headphones and leave it on his doorstep with a note that says "From a secret admirer." Maybe if he thinks like a beautiful woman got him some headphones, he might wear them. Something like that. I don't know, man. Cody Course. Also, Chuds love big government. They want it more on social issues. Yes, they do. Whenever you hear somebody talking about how they want small government and all that other stuff, not really. They don't really want small government. They just want big government to control things that they want to control. You know, like they have no problem with big government telling you that you're not allowed to plan your own family or you're not allowed to, control when and with who that you have a child with, right? Got no problem with that. They got no problem with big government telling you that what sports you're allowed to compete in or what bathroom that you have to belong to or what substances you're allowed to imbibe, right? Or when and where you're allowed to say certain things, when you're allowed to protest. Like they got no problem with all that stuff when it comes to big government. They want the government to be way bigger in those regards. It's just when it comes to actually doing shit that helps people that they say big government is the problem. And what they really mean is they don't want black people getting any of their tax money. That's what big government, that's what that excuse actually really is, by the way. You know, it's basically an excuse for racism, saying that, and you'll hear the alt people in the alt right say this. They'll say shit like, "Yeah, I would support universal health care if there were no black people." I'm not even kidding. You'll hear people in the alt. You'll hear people like Richard Spencer and shit will say, well, they'll say that kind of thing. It's like, well, because you'll say like, well, how come, in Northern Europe, there's universal health care there, right? And people, there's social safety nets and all that, and those people are doing really well. How come we don't go with that? And the response you'll get back is like, well, it's because they have a monoculture there, and so people want to support these safety nets, right? I.e., everybody there's white. We don't care if our tax dollars goes to help white people, but when it goes to help non-white people, then we care. So that's essentially racism. That's racism. Institutional racism is the reason why we don't have universal health care in this country. That's the actual fucking truth. You know. So fuck that, people. Whenever you hear that, make sure you counter. That's the actual message that people say. Small government actually really means racism. Institutional racism really means I don't want my tax dollars helping those damn darkies. That's what it really means. Anyway, Dinah Cat, the blood smearing story is more like from The Walking Dead, I think. See, that's the thing. When you hear that, it does really sound like something you'd see in a TV show, doesn't it? It sounds like, but the fact that a child actually had to do this in real life is like fucking, man, that shouldn't happen, right? We shouldn't live in a country where that kind of thing is like, you know, ever has to happen, right? Like, seriously. And the fact that you can hear that story, like somebody can hear that story and still not want to take steps to prevent that from happening in the future really says something about how sick our nation actually is. America is sick. America has an illness, you know. I mean, that illness is fucking conservatism, if you ask me. Serious, man. How can you hear that story and not be moved by it? And this is a 10-year-old kid who's got the rest of his life in front of him if he doesn't get blown away in another school shooting, that is, right? This kid's going to have to deal with that until the day he dies. He's going to have nightmares for years over this, you know. How can people hear that story and not have any compassion? It really blows me away. And it's the same people who don't have compassion when children get sick, when somebody who can't afford to go to the doctor doesn't. That's where that comes from, you know. Judeo-Christian values allow people to look at someone who's in need and someone who's sick. And I wouldn't even say, it's not even Judeo-Christian values. It's American conservative values, which masquerade as Judeo-Christian values. Put it that way, right? Because actual real Judeo-Christian values says you should help sick people, that you should help the needy, that you should defend people who are not able to defend themselves, right? It's conservative Christian values are the ones where you can safely say, fuck you, I'm not helping you. That's American conservative values right there. So, Ann Coulter, that's her name. That was the person. Thank you, Down Cat. The person I was trying to think of that, like Candace Owens is sort of like a bottom scraping wannabe Ann Coulter. Thank you. That's what Ann Coulter does. Ann Coulter, basically, her entire business model is outrage posting. She says controversial things to get herself in the news, and that way she can sell more books. You ever notice when Ann Coulter gets when somebody questions Ann Coulter, she'll usually swear in her response, so that way the news won't put it. You know what I mean? Like if a reporter goes up to Ann Coulter and says, "Oh, what do you think about XYZ?" Something that goes against, if they try to question her, something that goes against her political views, she'll use the word fuck or something like that, and then that way it won't get clipped because the news doesn't want to say that. You know what I mean? They don't want to put profanity on the news. That's her that's her shtick almost, right? Anyway, Ann Coulter's a vile piece of shit too. Fuck Ann Coulter, seriously. Although she's kind of fading away a little bit here. I mean, probably time for her to write another stupid ass book. But anyway, what else we got? She's a truly vile piece of shit. Ann Coulter, by the way, racist, homophobic, fucking everything. The kitchen sink, right? Dynacat, Musk hasn't bought Twitter yet. Let's hope that he doesn't. I really hope that he doesn't. And I'm not gonna like lie. The reason why I don't want Elon Musk to buy Twitter is because I don't want Donald Trump to be on Twitter. That's exactly 100%. The reason why I think Donald Trump won his election was because of his social media presence. That was, if not the reason, it was a very big, like, it was a very big booster, if not the only. I mean, obviously, it's not the only reason, right? But it's one way in which he definitely dominated online spaces during that and had massive amounts of followers. And all it took for him was to tweet something, and then it was all over the news. And, so Donald Trump, the whole time he was like running for president, not even president yet, but the time he was running for president, you know, and he would get in fights with like fucking Rosie O'Donnell or some shit like that. And it would get tweeted and it would be all over the and what does that do, right? It keeps him in the news. So even if it's negative news, like that's the thing that you got to remember, right? It's even like, bad news is good news because it keeps your name in there. And it was just every time that he would like say something stupid or whatever, and like it would be all over the news, and then people would like rally to his side, and it always had a negative effect. Like shit that would tank any other politician like would boost Donald Trump. So he would come out and say something fucking racist or whatever, or vile, or call like fucking Alec Baldwin and a moron or something, or make up a name for like little Ted or whatever. He'd do some shit like that, and every other person that usually you would think like this would ruin their career, it would just boost Donald Trump because it was like crack to his followers. They like fucking loved it because it was like watching this like fucking this like it was like watch like they loved it for the same reason why people like insult artists like Don Rickles or some shit. You know what I mean? Like one of those like put down artist kind of comedians. What do you call them? Like insult sort of comedians. Like it was the same kind of effect. And so every time he said something stupid, it just pissed people off. And then his followers liked it because the libs were getting triggered, right? And when did Donald Trump's like, you know, um, when did his approval ratings and shit like finally start tanking? It was after Twitter banned him, right? Which they didn't do until like after the fucking insurrection. That was finally if you remember, that was a step too far for Twitter. It was after Donald Trump tried to fucking take over the country and like, tried to do a coup d'etat. Let's not forget what that actually was. What the it was an actual insurrection. He tried to steal the fucking country, right? Tried to steal the presidency. And after like Twitter decided, okay, this is too far, you're out of here. That's when Donald Trump's ratings started going down. When that point he was already like not president anymore, so it would have gone down a little bit anyway, but then it started shrinking, right? Even though it's back, it didn't really shrink all the way. Like it's still pretty abnormally high for an ex-president, but that's what it was. Why did that happen? Because his social media presence was diminished. So he wasn't able to spread his shit around. So he couldn't just say something fucking ridiculous and get it on the news every fucking night, right? And then people started like, and people started actually kind of forgetting about him a little bit. And then they started thinking about, hey, the last 4 years were actually kind of really shitty. Right? And you know what? If they bring Donald Trump back, it's gonna undo that. And that's why I don't want. And I know like a lot of people on the left don't want to admit this. They don't want to admit it because they're kind of in denial that people are so easily manipulated. But I think that's the fucking reason. So yes, I don't want Elon Musk to buy Twitter specifically for that reason. And you know what? If he buys Twitter and he doesn't let Trump back on, maybe I'll stay on Twitter. But I already said if Trump comes back, I'm leaving Twitter, right? Because fuck that place. Seriously, I couldn't support that platform if they're gonna allow Donald Trump to go on there and spread lies again. Like it's gonna happen all over again. So here's hoping that this latest fucking like sex scandal and shit this convinces the Twitter board not to take the money. But we all know they're gonna take the fucking money, folks. They're gonna take the money because it's capitalism. It's capitalism. They're taking the money. You know. Anyway, moving on. Dynacat. South can't secede because their army is all in Michigan, Wisconsin. Wisconsin, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and Minnesota. Total. Oh my God. Yes, yes, incredibly true. Oh man. Oh shit, that shit was funny. Dynacat, Glenn Greenwald, maybe, but personally I think he's just a Russian agent and has been from the 90s. You think so? Wait, are you talking about like, oh, you mean like Glenn Greenwald is like, is sort of setting the agenda? Is that what you mean? I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really know enough about Glenn Greenwald, so I can't really talk to that. But seems like he's kind of shown his true colors recently, right? You know, so I don't know. I'd have to read more about him, but that's one thing. I'll look into him. You know, I kind of really don't. I mean, I know who he is, but I don't really follow him or anything like that. But I just know that he's been there was something in the news about him recently. God, what was it? Glenn Greenwald kind of falling for like, yeah, like propaganda, like when it comes to the Ukraine and stuff like that. So I'll have to check that out. Sorry, can't really comment on that one, Denicat. Denicat, conservatism is one thing, bad enough, but don't dignify fascists by calling them conservative. Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, I do want to maintain, though, that the conservatives in our country now, are the ones who are turning everything fascist. I do want to point that out. This is kind of a sort of a little, I've been having like discussions about this very thing on Reddit and stuff like that, where you always sort of get those people who have the, you know, both sides are the same kind of attitude when it comes to stuff like this. And sorry, my mic is the wires around the mic. Sorry about that. And I just want to kind of like, emphasize that it's definitely the creeping fascism in the country is not coming from the left. It's coming from, you know, the conservatives, the right wing, right? And when you say like what I mean is that the average normal conservative is not a fascist, obviously, but they seem to be kind of enabling it. That's where the movement is glomming onto. The fascist movement is glomming onto conservatism. It's glomming onto republicanism. You know, the Republicans, right? The conservative Democrats in this country. And that's where they're going to take power. You know what I mean? Like if they do, hopefully they never do, but that's where they're trying to. They're basically supplanting the conservative movement and are going to use them in order to take power. That's where I see it heading. So just want to because there is a lot of people that don't really believe in there are people on the left especially anarchists and stuff like that that they don't believe in electoral politics, and it can get really hard to convince people that it's like, yes, you need to do your direct actions, right? Do the things that outside of the political system in order to make the world a better place. Obviously, yes, but you should not ignore electoral politics, because all the direct actions in the world that you're going to take, all of the things that you do to help people, the all of the institutions you establish in order to help people can be undone if the wrong person gets into office and passes a law to undo everything. A good example of that is abortion. You know, imagine you were an organization to help women get abortions. Say Planned Parenthood, for example. Imagine you were them and you go around the country to help women get reproductive health care. And you do other things besides abortions too. Planned Parenthood, they help with all kinds of things, right? Not just abortions. I mean, they help with birth control, they help with like breast cancer, you know, and just like women's health in general, right? And you spend, so imagine you have an organization kind of like them and you spend, 20, 30 years doing all of this stuff and helping women and etc. and establishing roots and like, making connections in order to get funding and all that stuff. And then the state, elects some fucking like, you know, ultra conservative that passes a law that completely bans abortion. Like what kind of happened 2 days ago in Oklahoma. That law that, when we were talking about abortion 3 weeks ago and how they had a law that was going through their Oklahoma State Senate in order to 100% ban abortion, that has passed in Oklahoma. It is now illegal in every in circumstance to get an abortion in Oklahoma. There is no way that a woman can now get an abortion in Oklahoma. That's 100% illegal. Now it's going to go through the courts. It's going to hit the Supreme Court and it's going to be upheld. So bye bye to abortion in Oklahoma. Completely gone. All of the actions, all of the direct actions that people have been doing there for years in order to ensure, reproductive rights have just been undone at the stroke of a pen, right? So it matters. It matters who's in charge. It's like, yeah, okay, do what you can do in order to help people outside of the political system if that's your thing. If you don't trust politicians, if you don't trust the government, you don't want the government to have power in this area or that, whatever. I understand all these things even from a left-wing perspective, right? I understand all these things, and I understand people who object on moral grounds, saying that they're not going to, support or take part in a government that does certain things, supports apartheid in Israel, for example, whatever. When like that's something, drops bombs in Yemen, whatever. If you support, that kind of thing, you don't want to support the government because of their foreign policy is unjust, and so you're not going to vote. I understand that as well, right? But you got to understand what the risk is. You should understand if you take those if you take that stance, you should understand that you're risking the wrong people getting empowered. You're risking everything that you work for to be undone because the actual power in this country is political. It is, right? And it doesn't matter how much you protest, it doesn't matter what direct actions you take, it doesn't matter how many signs you hold or chants you do. If you don't have somebody that's sympathetic to your message, then what you want isn't going to happen. You know, if the wrong people are in charge, they decide to crack down, they will, and you will never get your message. You'll never get your agenda passed. That's what happens when social movements fail. Not every social movement is a success. You always look at something like the civil rights movement as an example of a successful social movement, right? But there are plenty of social movements out there that have not succeeded. You know, like Occupy Wall Street, for example, right? Perfect fucking example of a social movement that just petered out and died because there was nobody in office that was sympathetic towards the message. And I point that one out specifically because Barack Obama was the president during that. We even had a Democrat in charge there that didn't do anything. And it's like, why didn't he do anything? Because he wasn't open to the message. So you need to vote in people that are sympathetic to your message, people who are actually going to do something when you pressure them to do it, you know. And most of the time those people are Democrats. They just are. That's just how it is in reality now. Like I said, there are zero Republicans right now who want to do something about healthcare. They're talking all this shit about mental illness and how that causes gun violence and everything. There are zero Republicans that want to do anything about mental illness, untreated mental illness. Zero. Find one. Find one for me of any Republican out there that will put their money where their mouth is and propose some legislation in order to get mental health care out there. There aren't any because it's a bullshit excuse. It's a bullshit excuse that they're giving in order to not actually do anything, right? Zero Republicans out there want to do anything about gun control. None of them, right? Zero Republicans out there want to do anything about jobs. If the only thing they want to do about jobs is cutting taxes, because that's the lie that they fucking perpetuate is that job creators need low taxes in order to create jobs, when in real life that's not what happens, right? None of them, zero Republicans care about the Republic, like zero. None of them have any plan when it comes to environmental changes and like the severe environmental damages we're facing, the ecological collapse that we're facing in this country right now. So, prove me wrong, man. Send me, if anybody out there, if you're a conservative or whatever, and you think I'm wrong, that's great. Send me fucking the GOP's plan to save, to stop global warming. Let me see it. Send me their plan to get us jobs. Send me their plan. Send me their fucking universal healthcare plan in order to get healthcare. Send me any healthcare plan at all that they have. It's like they don't fucking have it because they don't care about these things, right? So that's why voting is important, man. Anyway, I think we can end it there. Ouch. My fucking. Okay, one more comment. One more comment. Cody Course. In other words, Chuds want our demographics to match that of Poland and Chechnya, and they'll be going full command economy. I believe so. Yes. That's at least the if you get the answer from the alt-right, that's what it is. That they because so believe it or not, the alt-right is not exactly 100% in support of capitalism either, right? And when I say the alt-right, I'm talking about like the Richard Spencer, like fucking that crowd, the those people, the Richard Spencers, the fucking America First assholes, you know. And the reason why they're not is because they don't really make a lot of money, these people, because they don't have jobs, because they're losers. Let's remember, alt-right, fucking losers, right? If they weren't losers, they wouldn't be part of the alt-right, put it that way, right? So of course, they're blaming this, they're trying to blame it on Jews. So if you were to talk to Richard Spencer, or if you were to talk to, what's that other fucking little incel's name? What the fuck is that guy's name? Hang on, I gotta look him up. There's like the America First asshole. Let's see, America First incel. I bet I can find his name. America First. Now what's his name? Fucking the guy that has like is horny for cat boys. Nick Fuentes. That's his name. Right. Like people like Nick Fuentes and like Richard Spencer and all that. Yeah, they don't really like capitalism either because they basically blame the fact that they're losers on Jews. That's why they don't like capitalism, right? But they don't want to spend tax dollars on things like social safety nets or like UBI or anything like that. They would be perfectly fucking happy giving those benefits to white people, though. So keep that in mind. Like, if you were to, Nick Fuentes would be perfectly happy if his tax dollars went to help white people who were poor. But he just doesn't want black people or Latinos or Asians or anybody else to like take advantage of that. So that's exactly the truth, right? And that's kind of, I mean, the thing is, you'll never get a Republican politician admit to that. But that's kind of what the pattern has been for the last 40 years since civil rights. The pattern has been, they've cut funding to schools, right? They support things like school vouchers because they want kids to go to private school. The reason why they want people to go to private schools because they want the public school because public schools are where all the black kids go and the non-white kids go. So they want the state to pay for white people to go to public school so they can be seriously, that's it. Like look up the history of like school basically in this country. That's what it is. Since civil rights, where all these private schools come from, right? They all came after segregation was lifted. Suddenly all these private schools show up and they're expensive. And the reason why they're so expensive is so that it blocks out a certain segment of the population who can't afford it, right? That's exactly the fucking truth. I mean, look at where the police in general came, in this country, like they started as slave patrols. And it's absolutely true. And it's no it's no coincidence that, black people are always like non-white people. I mean, but specifically black people, right? They're always policed at higher rates and they go to prison for things that white people just don't go to prison for. I'm sure I'm not the only person to notice that whenever there's a dangerous maniac and the dangerous maniac is white, the cops try to take him alive. When there's a criminal, a dangerous maniac, and he just happens to be black, he's most likely to get blown away. That's I'm not the only person to notice that, right? So I think maybe we should do a whole stream on this. I'm just sort of speaking off the cuff right here, but I think it's not just a coincidence. There's more than enough evidence, I believe, in order to make a compelling case that really the reason why the social safety nets in this country have been slowly dismantled over the last 100 years is because of institutional racism. If not the only reason, it's a very big reason, very big factor. So anyway, guys, okay, I gotta end this. Gotta end this, folks, because I'm fucking hungry as fuck, and it's already like 1:30. But thank you all for like hanging out with me this whole time. I really appreciate that. You know, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help. Those of you guys also who hung on all the way to the end, that really helped too. I really appreciate it. You know, but it really does help with the algorithm when you hit that like button, right? I mean, I know you hear that in every person's video out there tells you to fucking like and subscribe, and it's because that's how it is. The YouTube really like the YouTube algorithm really sucks and does not help normal people at all. So, anyway, but yeah, so I appreciate all of you, your support. I really appreciate that. Dynacat, it's great to see you as always. Cody Chorus, great to see you. Adversary Fandon too, great to see you too. And time for my ending speeches, guys. So, let's just turn on my window. If you like what I do and you want to see more of my work, you can see me, of course, at my DeviantArt site. This is, I put all my work here. Here's the thing that I did. This is some fan art. If you guys have ever heard of Cirrus the Skeptic on YouTube, it's actually pretty good. I did some fan art for Cirrus. So anyway, check me out there on my DeviantArt site. And I also have a webcomic called Huanja.com, fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas, it has talking ducks, it's got people getting punched in the face, stuff like that. Check me out there. If you like what I do and you want to support me monetarily, I have an Etsy shop where I sell prints and stuff like that. Please check me out. I also sell comics and, that kind of thing. This one is Shumagorath. Did you know that Shumagorath is actually not specifically owned by Marvel Comics? It was created by Robert E. Howard. So, anyway, that's my print of Shumagorath. So anyway, yeah, please check me out there on my Etsy shop. And if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and stuff, check me out on UCD videos. Toys, video games, that kind of thing. and movies, whatever. I'm going to be doing a lot more with that in the future. So anyway, thank you all again, everybody. Great to see you as well. And we will do this again next Saturday at 11 a.m. Adios, everybody.